hide their head? Why are they everywhere? Public censor, crowds and trances, let's control it, let's control it. Buy the product, sell your soul, fill the pockets, pay the toll, sell the vision, holy scream, bow before the guillotine, sacred symbols, dollar signs, whispers, carved in crooked lines, every leader shaking hands, building temples on the sand. They say it's all for peace, they say it's all for love, but the eyes behind the curtain are laughing from above. Everybody's watching, everybody's fair. They got their secret temples, symbols in the air. Everybody's silent, nobody's fair. They've written all the answers. Control is what they say. Illuminati, Freemason body, hands in the air, puppeteer, eyes everywhere, everywhere. Raise your glass to gaze and clay, to the light like circus bay. Marble statues, plastic rugs, empty prayers of stolen bones. Say the pledge and take the test. Put the truth back in the chest. Every chain you think you break is another chain they make. They're in the towers. They're in the screens. They're in your nightmares. They're in your dream. Every wired, every code, every blue wing, every road. Everybody has gone, everybody's fair. They've got the secret temples, symbols in the air. Everybody's silent, nobody's fair. They've written all the answers. Control is what they say. Why do they always watch?
They're laughing while you sleep.
Why do they always stare?
They'll take what you can't keep.
Why are they everywhere? Everywhere! 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 Everywhere!
Man. Yeah, you already know what it is. We back here to serve some more game on ground for them hungry hounds. So just get out the pound and are ready for the next round. And might I add, I forgot how hard that song was. I really did. I swear it's like you'll make some music and then you'll forget that you made a song or even an album until you see it and you're like, oh shit. And you go back to listen to it and you're like, damn, I forgot how hard that was. And that's 100% facts. So, with that being said, y'all can see the title of this episode. It's live, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be checking out CANDACE Owens. Now, apparently, she was recently challenged to a debate by TPUSA about Charlie Kirk's death. So that would be very interesting when it happens. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and check this out. I'm going to get this up on the screen. All right, let's jump into this. Actually, hold on. Before we jump into this, there we go. Now let's jump into this. I hate that default fucking layout. Let's get it.
I actually want to begin this episode with a comment from yesterday's episode because, we ran that poll wondering whether or not the public agreed with me about my lawsuit, me being filed by Brigitte Macron, me being sued by Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, and whether or not it was just one big federal setup meant to bankrupt me. And here is an answer that we got in the comment section. Look at this. I believe that the purpose of Macron's lawsuit was that it was supposed to go nowhere because Candace was supposed to have been assassinated before the case got to court. Then they could forever claim that Candace was lying, which is evident by the fact that they were suing her for quote unquote defamation before someone had killed her. This was their plan, but I pray that it has now been foiled. I had never considered that, and that hit really deeply, and that is a dark thought. And I think now I'm wondering, I have a lot of questions. Everything feels different in this post-Charlie Kirk world. Where to begin? How about we should talk about the founding of America? Because, man, those Catholic priests that I was telling you about, they were unbelievably correct. I told you guys a long time ago how when I was considering whether or not I should be Orthodox or Catholic, but I knew that I was sort of done with Protestantism, I had been taking instruction from these priests in Europe and in the UK. And one of the fathers is a real bookworm, right? Kind of this cantankerous Englishman, no time for the American education system whatsoever. And he said to me quite famously, "You Americans know nothing of your own history. Your country was founded by Freemasons." And that just kind of permanently now echoed.
It's crazy, bro. I've been said that a long time ago. And that wasn't like, oh yeah, I know this is the truth, that it was founded by Freemasons. But I was always like, dude, what if, this, because I remember, I think it was a picture of George Washington. It was a painting, but he was standing in between two Masons. Why would you paint that if they didn't have no type of involvement in the founding of America? You know what I'm saying?
It was in my ear because, boy, was he right. A war that had been sort of waging across Europe for centuries had then spilled into America. It was largely a spiritual war. It was really a theological war. That's what I'm starting to realize. That's why America never really had an appetite for Orthodox or Catholicism, because the Catholics and the Orthodox have kept history. They know what was going on in Europe, not the fake history that's packaged and sold to Americans. They know what the Freemasons were up to. Freemasons who caused all of those revolutions against really the Christian empire across Europe. The idea really, I now think, is keep Americans fat and dumb and drugged and propagandized, right? And then when we need to, use their men to mass murder other Christians overseas. That's the big picture that I'm beginning to see. All of this to say, did you know that our FBI was founded by Charles Joseph Bonaparte? I had no idea. I hate to be American ignorant, but I had no idea. And yes, that man was the founder. And yes, that is like Napoleon Bonaparte. His grandfather, Charles's grandfather, was Napoleon Bonaparte's brother. This is his great uncle. Napoleon Bonaparte was his great uncle, which makes it kind of hilarious, right? Because our tip yesterday from that person in Wilmington, Delaware, was asserting that the FBI had these offices, these kind of hidden offices, maybe kind of in buildings that appear to be in part controlled by French American families who might have some conflicted interests. Particularly, we were discussing the DuPont family, right? Mentioning the DuPont family led to a flurry of tips coming out of Delaware. It was incredible. People in Wilmington saying, they own kind of everything, hospitals, schools, buildings, you name it, it is theirs. And then we received some more tips from people who were invested in sort of the urban legends of the DuPont family. They were telling us, hey, I went to school with DuPonts. There's a lot of stories there. And these stories sound a lot like what you were covering in your Becoming Brigitte series. You remember actually right before we had been sort of interrupted in Becoming Brigitte series 2, season 2, we were speaking about Eric Dupont Moretti, and we were speaking about how he was kind of known in a name for himself, making an argument for happy incest. Yeah. People were telling us, like, hey, this DuPont family, there's a lot going on there. And they've also maybe been involved in some murders. Again, this was DuPont folklore, if you will. But then more emails came in. And you know what? It's not entirely folklore. Okay. It's really just not. This is actually an article that appeared in Vanity Fair. So let's read it together. And I'm going to issue a trigger warning right at the top because it is disturbing. Today's episode in general, I should say, is not for the faint of heart. Here's the headline. DuPont heir gets no prison time for raping 3-year-old daughter. Okay. And the person who emailed this over said, this has actually kind of lived in me for over a decade because I was so disturbed by the story. And you should read this. And it tells us that Robert Richards IV was in 2009 convicted of raping his 3-year-old daughter 7 years after she, who was just 5, told relatives that she didn't want her father to be touching her anymore. Then it says, in an alarming twist, the judge who sentenced the heir to the DuPont fortune let him off with no jail time, arguing that the 6'4" Richards will not fare well in prison. That was the argument.
Dude, anybody who rapes a child, I don't care what age the child is, your mandatory sentence should be castration and then life in prison. And that should be the minimum. The minimum sentence should be castration and life in prison. That's crazy. Especially your own child. Come on, bro.
The lawyer made, and the courts in Delaware found that to be valid. So instead of sentencing him for prison for raping a toddler, it goes on and tells us that Judge Jan Jordan ruled that Richards would benefit from treatment instead. Critics have since noted that such treatment is usually offered only to drug addicts or those in possession of child pornography, not convicted rapists. And the details of the case became public this month when Richards' ex-wife sued him for damages related to the abuse of their daughter. Here is how the News Journal describes the convicted rapist in this case, quote, Richards.
And then if there's like real concrete evidence that it did happen and a judge lets them off, that judge needs to be sentenced as well, barred, have their law degree revoked and thrown in prison, because they're just as complicit in letting these rapists and murderers go. Like, come on, bro.
Who is unemployed and supported by a trust fund, owns a 5,800 square foot mansion in Greenville that he bought for $1.8 million in 2005. He also lists a home in the exclusive North Shores neighborhood near Rehoboth Beach, according to the state's sex abuse registry. Tells us that his great-grandfather is the DuPont family patriarch, Irénée DuPont, and his father is Robert H. Richards, a retired partner in the Richards, Layton, and Finger law firm. Now, I already know what you're going to say. Hey, Candace, is that the law firm that's filing the paperwork for you? And the answer to that is yes. And I did not know that, no, until literally yesterday, because Richards didn't sound to me like DuPont, so I had not put 2 and 2 together as I was doing this episode talking about the DuPont family. I hadn't realized that the people that are filing paperwork for me, or rather the founder of that firm, the founding partner of that firm, who's since retired, is DuPont. It's the DuPont family. So it makes sense because, as the people in Delaware are telling us, everything is DuPont. The Vanity Fair article continues. The heir to the DuPont chemical fortune, and to be clear, that is what they specialize in, chemicals that are used in war. We're going to get more into that later. Also admitted to sexually assaulting his infant son. He was initially charged with 2 counts of second-degree child rape, which would have carried a mandatory 20-year prison term if convicted. Richards, again accused of raping 2 of his own children, was instead released on a $60,000 bail.
Golly, bro, what type of shit? Oh my gosh. This dude, at this point, he needs to die. That's crazy, bro.
He copped a plea deal that involved him admitting that he had abused his children, but received that lesser charge of 4th-degree rape. Okay. Now, the article goes on to tell us that this is hardly the first time that the DuPont family has found itself the focus.
Let's say in the judiciary as well. What's good saying, Dar? No, that's 100% facts, bro. And that's what I'm saying. Any judge that lets somebody off when there's concrete evidence that they have raped a child or sexually assaulted a child, I don't care what age the child is, They need to be barred, and they need to have their law degree revoked, and they need to be thrown in prison too. That's crazy.
Of unsavory headlines. John DuPont shot Olympic wrestler David Schultz dead in the driveway of the family's mansion in 1996. 2 years later, the decomposing body of a Las Vegas prostitute was found stuffed in the air conditioner of a seedy motel. She was killed by 3 hired hands. As Dominic Dunn reported in Vanity Fair, the money traced back to the DuPont family. It appeared that Lisa Dean, who is a DuPont, didn't approve of her drug-addicted son dating a drug-addicted Vegas sex worker, so she and her husband, Christopher Mosley, had her killed. Both John DuPont and Mosley died in prison. Okay, great, cool. France in the story. We've got an alleged murder for hire. I guess not an alleged murder. It's not alleged, it's just murder for hire. We've got incest. We've got Jeffrey Epstein's ties to France. I'm just kind of noticing a theme here, if you will. A theme here that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Because you should be feeling uncomfortable, especially if you're me, okay? And you find out, really, by the grace of God, that there was this plot to murder me, okay? I'm just not liking all of this coincidence. I'm starting to feel like a conspiracy, if I'm being honest with you. And we should get back to our map now because it's getting a little squishy in Wilmington, Delaware. I'm feeling claustrophobic in Wilmington, Delaware, and I've never even been there, okay? So here's our block. We've got a couple of blocks here, and we've told you yesterday, we've got this FBI suite in this building that's actually owned by the Wilmington Trust at 500 Delaware Avenue. We've got Brigitte Lawyers at 919 North Market Street. Also in that building happens to be Stacey Sheridan's registered agent. That's Stacey Sheridan of Turning Point USA. We're going to talk about her in a second. We've got the Wilmington Trust actual location, which is at 1100 North Market. We told you about this red crane at 1100 North King Street, and that's Brace Bridge Complex, which is supposed to house Insight headquarters, and they've got a French CEO. It's just a lot happening here. And again, now having a registered agent in Delaware you have an LLC, you're supposed to have a registered agent, and people tend to choose between Wyoming and Delaware, sometimes Las Vegas to form their own corporations. But wow, what are the chances that Stacey Sheridan has a registered agent that's in that building too? Because I have LLCs, and I've got LLCs in Delaware, and I'm not even in Wilmington. There's a lot to choose from. It's a whole state. But Stacey Sheridan's registered agent is there too. People had noted, by the way, that she had a few LLCs, which she was getting paid through. It could all be above board. I don't really know. But the one I'm speaking about is Cloverstone Ventures. Stacey, by the way, is the Senior Advancement Director at Turning Point USA. She was brought in specifically by Tyler Boyer to raise money and to take Turning Point to the next level. And regarding Tyler Boyer, now we could say maybe a couple of weeks ago that he's a criminal, but actually Donald Trump pardoned him. He pardoned Tyler Boyer a couple of weeks ago, so we can't. That's actually not real. He's been pardoned. But he is always up to no good, I can tell you that. And he brings in this Stacey Sheridan. I got to tell you, I did not like her at all. Just the vibe was off. I did not like her, and I expressed that to Charlie to his face when she was hired. That's when I kind of notoriously said to him, you can't go down this path with money, okay? Because people that want to raise money and you bring people over with the incentive of just wanting a lot of money, you can run into trouble that way. Which is why I didn't feel great. Stacey Sheridan is the one that was filming. Everyone was like, who's filming his casket? As it's being escorted off of Air Force Two, crying, holding that Stacey. Like I said, I just felt spiritually that Charlie hiring her was a mistake. She didn't pass my vibe check. Suddenly she's everywhere. She's eulogizing Charlie Kirk on stage. She is capturing intimate photos of his casket. She's then at the White House shedding tears over this fake holiday that's been created when I just want to solve actually who did this. And the whole thing was making my skin crawl, if I'm being honest. Her involvement specifically made my skin crawl. And I want to say that openly and honestly, okay? But she's there. And she's there in this squishy block. In this one block, we are all just chilling Wilmington, right? And we would have never gotten to this block, by the way, had it not been for the Egyptian planes. Us simply tracking these Egyptian planes and somebody giving us a tip like, hey, kind of weird that's flying through Wilmington. And we go, aha, lights on. And here we are, right? We learn about this French and Israeli Ace Partners being the second largest shareholder of Satis. They decide to lease out this hangar. We learn that requires federal approval because it sits on federal airways. And maybe that means it requires French approval. Who knows? I don't know anything at this point, except everything stinks to high heaven. And so I started asking myself, what do we all have in common? Why are we all just chilling in Delaware? That's what I'm trying to ascertain. What are we all doing over here near King Street? Who is the king? Right? Do we have some shared interest that I haven't seen through yet? And now would be the appropriate time for us to get back into that timeline, because there is an important question that we forgot to ask. So let's jump into our timeline, beginning with the inflection point, which was that Tucker Carlson speech. Now, I want to say this, on that July 11th, when Tucker Carlson gave that speech, I did, and I hope I'm not betraying anything too private here, but I asked Tucker about that speech. It's like, what inspired you? I went back and watched it, and he's going hard, and he's talking about where's all this money coming from, and, you know, is this even a meritocracy? Like, why are people that are not impressive billionaires? What's happening in this country? I asked Tucker, what made you say that? And he said, I had no plan to say it. It just came out of my mouth. It was just inspired. It just came out of my mouth when I hit the stage. There's no plan. Charlie said goes Max, and that is what Tucker riffs. And I do think that was a part of, there was something spiritual that moved him to say that. I will say that. Anyway, so that's July 11th. Tucker Carlson speaks at Turning Point USA's conference, and the donors freak out. Calls out Jeffrey Epstein. He says that people who serve in foreign armies should be stripped of their citizenship. He muses about Bill Ackman's wealth and where it comes from. We are told, even though we have not been able to confirm this with a shred of evidence, that it was 7 days later that the request came from to Turning Point USA from UVU's chapter, for Charlie to have this event. That's very late in the day already, but again, we see no proof of this. We do know that right after that, our Egyptian yellow plane flies to Lincoln, Nebraska. And 2 days later, it is announced in Nebraska that they're going to be doing a trade and investment trip with Egypt. There was some private off-record meeting that took place to make this come to fruition. And there were international professionals that were there per the media. But who were these professionals that met with Secretary of State Bob Evnen? Why is this meeting somehow off record? And when people, and they have done that, have requested information, they say, oh, there's nothing that's public that we can share with you. Thank you to, by the way, the citizens of Nebraska who did that. I received your emails, even if I was not able to respond. Anyways, then it departs Nebraska, our yellow planes, and it heads to Wilmington, and then it goes back to Cairo. We then know that in this same time frame-ish is when Charlie vacations up to Maine for a couple of weeks to be with his family, goes off radar. We've got Mikey McCoy and his wife, Eliza, that join them for the first time they're doing this joint family vacation, and Mikey's capturing these last videos that are going to warm our hearts about Charlie. And he's like, amazing. That's just how he is. And on July 25th, Charlie speaks in Westchester, New York. At the end of July, this is a new little update for you. Y-Refi comes in as the #1 sponsor of the Charlie Kirk Fall Tour. So this is end of July, early August. And I'm wondering why they did that then, because that's pretty late in the day. Remember, this was something they freaked out about when I said, hey, this is not how Turning Point events are come together. They're not instant, actually, in the history of me speaking on college campuses and having headlined these tours. They are planning them at least a semester ahead. And then it was like mass panic. I got like Lila Rose and Ali Stuckey, who have never headlined their tour, suddenly saying, that's not true. That's not true. What are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm talking about I worked there. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. And that was a weird thing to debunk. And I'm wondering, why was this put together so late in the day? And I am musing here, but I'm wondering if Y-Refi, after Charlie lost millions of dollars, said, hey, you can make that up by going on tour. You know, like are willing to do this. And maybe Charlie actually wasn't planning on going on tour at all. And this tour actually came together very quickly. I'm musing on that. I'm not introducing that as a fact. I'm introducing that as a question. Anyways, back to our timeline. Y-Refi is going big, and they are going to be the main sponsor of this fall tour. And that's how that came together. Then we know that in very early August, Turning Point was scouting that location and that event. And they specifically requested for Charlie to be in that amphitheater. Now, apparently Charlie had done, according to some insiders, had loved an event that he had done in an amphitheater environment in Nashville. But I don't know if he said, I only want to do that going forward. But I do know that Turning Point USA insisted upon that. The person that was orchestrating that event, Macy Crofts, was saying, look, this is what Charlie wants. And that could be true. August 2nd is when we have our French Legionnaires arriving in America for a 3-week training session in California, which is going to end on the 25th. And then a couple of days later, we have that Hamptons retreat, which Charlie Kirk himself described as an intervention, as an Israel intervention. And influencers who were there said that he was being pressed on his shifting viewpoints on Israel. And we know that the influencers were paid for by Bill Ackman. I don't think that that's particularly a big deal. Obviously, he has interests and was potentially coming on as a donor for Turning Point USA. We have what I do think is a big deal, which is Bibi Netanyahu calling Charlie and offering to take Turning Point to the next level. And that, my friends, is the billion-dollar question, maybe the...
Here we go with the, oh man, Israel this, Israel that. And I don't mean that as like, man, stop talking about Israel. I mean that as in, I don't know about y'all, but I get sick of hearing this Israel shit, bro. Like, it comes to a point where it's like, what's next? Oh man, he's changing up his views on Israel. So fucking what? So what? Israel propaganda is a lazy talking point. Right?
$1 trillion question, in exchange for what? Have we considered that? This man is fighting like a 20-front war, and he calls Charlie Kirk and asks, do you want to come to Israel? We can take Turning Point to the next level. In exchange for what and through who? Because I'm going to guess that Bibi Netanyahu is not just going to write a check signed by Bibi Netanyahu and just do that as an act of charity. In exchange for what was he going to take Turning Point to a next level? This is something that nobody has denied took place. No one has denied that this took place. And Charlie declined. Charlie declined that offer. So what that signals to me is that Charlie then had information about maybe how they move money, right? Without registering for FARA. I don't know. I think that's a big question that needs to be asked. Let's keep going onto this timeline. Charlie says no, and almost immediately, 10 days later, we got our next point is that our planes come back out and they're flying to Lincoln again. They're going to Omaha. They're going to Wilmington. They stay for one night. Charlie speaks in South Carolina. We have our yellow planes then returning on the 24th, again, always through Wilmington to Egypt. We then have our French Legionnaires have completed their training. And on August 24th, 27th, Operation Valhalla takes place between civilians and military men in Minnesota at Camp Ripley. Then we have the first public sign that went out on August 27th. August 27th is so late in the day to begin promoting an event. TPUSA, UVU, and a local BYU chapter share a graphic announcing that Charlie is coming to UVU, but there are no location details mentioned on that graphic, so still not full details, but at least the first announcement goes out. On the 29th, we have Operation Bright Star, which commences, that joint operation that we told you about, which is biennial between Egypt and the United States military and other countries that are coming together, and it is being reported that it is going to run through to September 10th. On September 2nd, Charlie sends out the email asking for a Doge audit of his company, and he announces that Justin Strife is going to be the new COO, taking over for Tyler Boyer, who was the COO. And then we have the first known public going out in local media that Charlie's coming to town and that it is going to take place in the courtyard. That's on September 2nd, okay? On September 4th, our planes come in and we know what happens next. Charlie is in Korea for a couple of days. He comes back on September 10th and he gets assassinated. And that also happens to be the same day that Operation Bright Star at Cairo joint operation formally ends. Okay, so that timeline makes me uncomfortable. Okay, it makes me very uncomfortable, and I'm wondering if Charlie put together the Doge account, and I want to be clear, this part is speculation, because something that he maybe learned when Bibi asked to take it to the next level made him think maybe I should look through Turning Point's finances, like where is this money coming in from and where is it going? And I don't know that for a fact, but I think it's a fair question, a fair investigative question, is what inspired Charlie to suddenly be concerned about not just where the money was going, but where the money was coming from. Was an offer made to him that he declined? Yes. What was that offer for in exchange? And I want to say this, Charlie said no. So Charlie died with his soul intact. Died with his soul intact. He said no. He said no to a lot of money. But it was actually a tip that I received early on that pulled everything together for me in a really dark way. It was water cooler talk at Turning Point USA immediately after Charlie's assassination. A few people had signified and were speculating and thinking about things that were weird. And, I told you we had so many people from Turning Point USA that were just venting in our tip box and telling us that they didn't like the way management was acting and things were weird. And there were just a flurry of things that were coming in. And a few of them had signified that one of the things that was being whispered about that people thought was quite odd that they learned that happened on the day of Charlie's assassination was a rumor pertaining to Justin Strife. An oddly placed phone call that he made almost immediately, as they say. This is alleged. It wasn't on the phone call after Charlie was shot. And I will say allegedly because there's 6 people at Turning Point USA who have said this, that were talking about this. This rumor got passed around. They said that Justin had placed an immediate call to a donor prospect. And I said, that's weird, okay? I'd like to know more about that. Can everybody try to figure out what donor that was? Now, it's possible it could have just been a very close donor friend. Charlie had them. He did. There were some donors that he loved like family members. And so that was a potential long shot thing, but just interesting. I'd like to know who he was so close to that required an immediate call. Then it turns out that these ladies told me that this donor actually had a pretty big piece of bait on the hook for Turning Point USA. A piece of their billion-dollar company. They were anticipating some IPO and that this was going to be life-changing money, okay? We're not talking like, a check that's going to be reeled in for $5 million or $10 million or $50 million or like the $90 million that Turning Point USA raised in the first couple of weeks following Charlie's assassination. We are talking like billionaire money, potentially billions of dollars. And this was a very big secret, a huge secret. Just a handful of people were allowed to even know about this, that this was happening. In fact, there's probably people that are watching this right now at Turning Point USA who work in donations. I think it's a pretty large department that have no idea, have never even heard of this because that's how incredibly top level secret this was. Okay. But people began to find out about this because of just an unfortunate conversation that had been left unattended to. Okay.
Interesting. So was that donation or that donor, was that something that somebody didn't want Charlie to have? Because that's what it sounds like. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like.
And why was the secret supposed to be so guarded? Why is this person getting a phone call? I wanted to know. I wanted to know more. And I start messaging our mommy sleuths and our daddy sleuths and all of my sources at Turning Point USA. And I'm saying anything that you can tell me about this in case this might be important. And I got an answer on the name of a donor and I had completely forgotten because, again, this happened so early following the assassination. I am talking before I even went to Wyoming. My brain was still traumatized. I had so much information that I was trying to process while I was grieving that I literally forgot the big part that I learned about this donor. I forgot. And these young women told me that this donor was French American and that this donor's name was Pierre. It wasn't until yesterday after we went off air that I presented to you all of the stuff about the DuPont family.
A French donor. Why is it that all of a sudden French has their hand in a bunch of stuff? This don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. Unless I'm missing something.
That it clicked and these ladies messaged me and said, "Oh, you figured it out. It's Pierre DuPont. Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point." I had mentioned Pierre DuPont.
Unless they just had their hand in a lot of stuff for a long time and just was able to keep it under like secret wraps. Like top secret wraps until Candace came on the scene.
On yesterday's show. And this took my breath away. I will be honest, I cried really.
So she mentioned Delaware being controlled by old French ties. Yeah, but why French? I don't know. I don't know.
Hard yesterday, thinking, my goodness, how could I have forgotten that this donor was French American, that was the big thing. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out that time because I hadn't even considered France's involvement in anything. Like, who do I know that's French and has tons of money and is involved in technologies and could possibly be working on a big check that could be kept secret because it's about to IPO and billions are on the line. And it all kind of came together. And I would like an answer about this Pierre, the billionaire French-American donor. And I would like a clean answer as to whether or not it is Mr. Pierre Dupont. Yeah. Because this would be a devastatingly dark story. And my sources are very sure that this is what was on the line, that this was life-changing money. And they are very sure that this individual got a phone call after the assassination. And I think that we deserve to know. I don't think this should be a secret, right? Charity shouldn't be a secret. Why? And by the way, it leads to more questions like, how could you say that you knew that your IPO was going to lead to billions of dollars? How could you promise that? How could you?
Or what if it wasn't Israel that killed Charlie? What if it was the French and paid, I don't remember what she said his name is, Jack Strife, whatever the hell his name is, paid him to somehow get somebody in. I don't know. I don't know how they would have done it, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Now, seeing as how they put a hit out on Candace, it kind of makes sense. Now, for what reasons they would have to do that, I'm not sure.
Promise that. And did Charlie know? Did Charlie know? And I'm going to be honest with you, I know a lot of billionaires, they don't part with their money like that. They don't part with their money and offer people pieces of their company, people that aren't even their family members. So why was that offer on the table? I have so many questions, and I'm going to ask them publicly. And I think that we demand answers. We should all be demanding answers because this is now starting to feel very, very dark. It's too French, right? It's just too French. We just can't all be hanging out in Delaware. And there's one more thing that came in regarding Andrew Colvett, very close family friend of Andrew Colvett, had messaged me early on. And I, again, was not tracking any of this at the time, but they had said that they felt that Andrew Colvett was acting weird. And I'm sure that's not a big deal. I think we were all acting weird. Charlie was assassinated. But moreover, they had mentioned that specifically Andrew had told them that when Charlie said no to Bibi, he lost out on millions. Now I'm going to say allegedly because this is a tip, but I have that tip in writing. I'm not lying to you. And I thought to myself, that is so weird. How could the spokesperson at Turning Point USA be how could they be gaining millions from that? What is the structure here of these contracts that even people that are in PR, people that are like running PR departments are getting tips on the basis of donations? I don't know how this is working, but we need to figure out how this is working. I think it's really important that we learn the truth about what happened. Who's Pierre? Is it Pierre Dupont? And has Turning Point been paid? Obviously, it wouldn't be on this year's taxes. We're not going to find those on this year's taxes, but they would be on next year's. But we can ask now, and I'm asking now. And there's more I want to share, but we're going to take a brief break for sponsors. I'll ask the party.
We're going to skip through this. You already know.
That's it. Egyptian plane story killed, and I find that to be very interesting. What is it about these Egyptian planes that Turning Point USA didn't want them to be discussed? I don't know. But I am going to find out. I think we kind of have found out in a weird, really effed up way, actually. It makes my stomach turn. I'm going to miss Charlie. I really am going to miss Charlie. And I think when Charlie was assassinated, there was something about it. I knew that this story was going to be dark. Instantly, I knew that Charlie was betrayed. They laughed at me. Oh, you had a dream. Charlie told you he was, yeah, Charlie told me that he was betrayed. And I think part of the mourning was, the grief that I was experiencing was in large part due to my understanding that this was going to be missional for me. I think I knew deep down that this was going to be missional. And I kind of knew deep down that the whole world was going to be against me, or I guess the whole dark apparatus was going to be against me, not the world. There are so many good people in the world that are the reason that I'm doing this, and who understood instantly and felt instantly what I felt when this all happened. And I think it's sad because I was just reflecting on, I guess, really the last part of my youth, being ignorant and thinking that we lived in a country that was free and was fair and was a meritocracy, the excitement of me and Charlie in politics. Like, we were young bucks thinking that we were going to change the world because the MAGA movement offered us this opportunity to do it, right? We were going to get Trump elected, and we're going to get people to stop talking about racism and sexism and to understand like family is a priority. And I realize now, and I know Charlie realizes now, that we did not see the evil that was around us. And I'm going to miss that youth. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to miss that young experience. I'm going to miss Charlie going on dates and the girls they liked, and me always being the wing woman, and him asking. This text message is one of my favorite text messages between me and Charlie when he was getting ready to go on a date. And, you know, he didn't date many people, and he was just kind of in love with this girl. And he was asking, should I wear this? And this is the text message. It's so sweet. He said, do I have to change this shirt? And I wrote back, yes. And throw it away if you can. Totally. And he writes, okay. And he's wearing a Turning Point early shirt that somebody, I think, gave to him. He's stitched on. Is it stitched on? Is it ironed on? I don't know. But I was like, Charlie, burn it. Obviously, burn that shirt. And it makes me, it's stuff that makes me cry and makes me sad, because he just was so young. You know, Charlie was so young, and he was such a good person. And I'm also going to miss the young conversations that you have when you're vibing with someone and you're speaking about things that you don't understand. As you were coming up in politics, I always felt like an alien. We would have these discussions with donors, and we'd have discussions with people, or people would do stuff, and I would just tell them all the time, Charlie, I'm an alien. I am new on this planet. I don't understand this. I don't understand double speak and, you know, contracts and people threatening to sue. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm an alien. And Charlie always said he felt like he was a time traveler. This is a conversation. I'd say, I'm an alien. I just messaged him from across the globe. And he said, I think I'm a time traveler. This is my home. He felt like Earth was his planet, but I think you found me and time traveled with me. Like the kind of friendship where you can talk about being a time traveler and feeling like an alien, as I've always felt like it, because I don't get it. I don't get the rules of this planet. I don't get the betrayal, the backstabbing, the people that dance for money. It's never made sense to me. From the time I was a kid, I just felt out of place. And I am out of place in politics. I will tell you that, because this is what it's all about, right? Selling your soul to the devil. And I don't want to do that.
You're out of place because you're not a part of it. That's a fact. A lot of people will sit around and feel like they're out of place when they go anywhere, because you're not a part of the crowd. You're not a sheep in the herd. And it's people like that that realize that, man, I'm supposed to be doing something different. I'm supposed to be doing something better than this. And a lot of people ignore that feeling and just jump in with the rest of the sheep. That's a fact. Hey, cut it out over there.
Anyways, that's just going a long way of me saying that I'm going to miss the ignorance of our political youth, thinking that it could be fair, thinking that we could just work hard, thinking that we could run a company, that we could launch this revolution where people were going to be happy in the future because America was the land of the free. I had to mourn that. Now I realized, and as I have expressed, that this is missional. Charlie knew he was going to die young, but there was more that were in those now seemingly prophetic text messages that I was unwilling to share at that time. But I am going to share that now. When he's speaking about his death and the visions that he was having in April of 2018, he also said some other things. He didn't just say that he was going to die. He didn't just say that Turning Point was going to be the death of him, but he also wrote this. This is on April 13th. He wrote this. He wrote, "Ish like tonight is what I have foreseen. This won't result in anything. I'll give you the context in a moment. But in our lifetime, we will experience real war beyond anything that we can fathom. Absolute and total destruction." Now, for historical reference, what was going on that week involved, of course, France, right? America, France, Israel, the Middle East, Syria, Russia. And this is the Syria before Israel and the United States overthrew Assad. What was going on was the United States and France were carrying out a series of military strikes involving an aircraft and these ship-based missiles against multiple government sites in Syria. And the official reason that we were told was because the Syrian government had apparently chemically gassed their own citizens, something which Assad had strenuously
Dude, I remember hearing something about that, and I always thought that was the dumbest shit ever.
denied. In effect, if Assad was telling the truth, and I believe he was, because I think there's a war on Christians that's happening, then the West and the United States were implicated in part by a false flag attack to justify a larger military justification. That's kind of something the West does a lot, right? False flag attack, get the media going, we have to respond, and then we just sort of take land. Yeah, that's what we do. France had said in a statement on that morning on April 14th, that France's red line had been crossed. So this was a story which Charlie said, this is not the thing that's coming, but this is a preview of the thing that's coming. Missiles, false flag attacks, chemicals, and the Middle East, America, France, and Israel. It is something. It is something, right? This was the vibe of something that Charlie felt was going to happen in the future. Something Charlie I used to always say, I told you that, the rest is future. I think we are in the rest right now. We are approaching that future right now. And I didn't feel it then in 2018, but I feel it now. I've been telling you guys, I have been having a lot of dreams. And the dread that Charlie felt in 2018, I have been feeling. I felt it leading up to Charlie's assassination. I pulled my children out of school. I was having this dreams and visions about bees and organization that was happening in America. I have a sense of dread that a lot of these events that are happening, these inexplicable events like the Malibu fires, sort of coastal events, the Texas floods, that this is not happening by accident. Okay, I have a feeling of a sense of dread that the Fed is taking from Americans right now, and that we are heading toward war. Okay, I'm going to share that. I feel that we are headed toward war, that they want war by any means necessary, and that you need to be, wherever you are in the world, fully dialed into that. Okay, we can't be stupid this time. We cannot believe what the media is telling us. We cannot believe what the governments are telling us. We cannot believe whatever it is, whatever attack that's going to happen, and we're going to be told that it was this guy. We have to start to recognize the pattern of things, okay? The predictive model of this is my red line, then the red line gets crossed and people are denying it. And what happens? Christians are mass slaughtered every single time. Propagandize people, Christians in the East, to hate Christians in the West. And there's just less of us by the end of it. And these things tend to happen, world wars, when they want a reset because people start waking up. And so I just wanted to express that to you, that I feel that we are reaching that brink right now. And you need to prepare for that. And it feels like an almost...
She said something interesting. She said that this happens when the Matrix wants a reset because people start waking up. That's interesting. That's crazy. And you know, I wouldn't doubt it either. I don't know if it's true, but I wouldn't doubt it. Think about it like this. If you're one of the like top people, so they seem in a rush, right? If you're one of those top people who, I guess, quote unquote, runs the world, countries, whatever, and you got too many common people that are waking up, and propaganda's not working, media's not working, government's not working, what would you do? You talk to somebody who runs countries on the other side of the world. Hey, we need to do something. All right, let's start a war. Make everybody forget about what's going on. Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, it's just a theory, but still, I think it makes sense. That's crazy. I never thought about it like that.
It's an inevitability because wars were planned in boardrooms, okay? In boardrooms. You're going to send you and your children and your sons, but they are not going to fight. And I don't love a scenario right now that's happening where we have envoys being sent to Russia and Israel and everybody's meeting all this. It feels like something's coming. And I know that you probably sense that dread too. Turning our attention to turning points. Did you know, I learned this from one of our sleuths that Turning Point might potentially now be becoming a real estate empire. Apparently, Tyler Boyer has a younger brother who for 10 years has worked in dental sales. Until Charlie died, because a unique opportunity presented itself at Turning Point USA, where Tyler had begun telling people that TPUSA plans to roll out a program to build houses for first-time home buyers. They're going to use Turning Point USA's position and audience to market this idea of new homes. And the marketing pitch is that Charlie preached to young Christians about how school and universities was a waste of time and that it was a waste of money and that they should get married early and they should start their lives and they should have kids. But he never really taught them how or what they should do next. So they are planning to leverage Turning Point USA's position with young Christians as a captive audience to build and sell houses. Okay, that's what the person told me, and I checked that out. They presented some proof of that conversation happening. And I think that's interesting. I think we should share that. And I'm sure that that's probably what Charlie wrote. He apparently had a 15, 20-year plan, according to Frank Turek. Or was it Rob McCoy? Rob McCoy said that, I think. I think they all said it, honestly, but Rob McCoy did say that. He kept this in his notebooks. And so a real estate empire could be on the brink for Turning Point USA. Amazing. That really is something. Anyways, you guys, we are going to take another break for our spot.
I mean, I don't understand. I don't really understand why she felt the need to share that part, but yeah. This is getting very interesting now that, we're figuring out that the French has a lot to do with stuff that's some stuff that's going on. I'm curious to see where this goes. I want to get to the bottom and see who was really responsible, who really pulled the trigger on Charlie Kirk. Could it have been France? Could have been. Could it have been Israel? It could have been. Could it have been our own CIA? It could have been. There's all these different variables of how it could have been. So she mentioned Monday about something called the Safi Club. What the hell is the Safi Club? Safi Club. I don't know. That sounds like some Safari Club. Still, what the hell is a Safari Club? It's interesting. That sounds something that would be kind of French. Unless I'm tripping. I don't know. But there's all these different variables, all these different organizations that could have had their hand in it. And it's interesting to see where it goes. I'm also interested to see this debate that Candace's going to be doing with Turning Point USA about Charlie Kirk. I think if Erica's there, she's probably going to get in her feelings a lot because of some of the stuff that Candace is probably going to end up saying. And I think the people from Turning Point USA are going to get in their feelings a lot too because of some of the stuff that Candace is probably going to be saying. But we know that Candace doesn't really hold back. So this will be interesting. But until then, I'm going to go ahead and get this outro pulled up, and then we are going to bounce. So, with that being said, appreciate y'all for tapping in, man. Make sure y'all share with y'all friends, y'all families. It says, countries doing assassinations and undercover missions, France, Egypt, Iran, Safari Club. Interesting. So it's like a hub of hitmen, pretty much, is basically what you're saying. That's what it sounds like to me. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. It almost sounds like some John Wick type shit. Like how they had that whole club type shit of all the different hitmen or whatever. I don't know. So thanks for the live. Appreciate you for tapping in. And all the rest of you bush campers in there too. Y'all always stay camping in the bush. It don't ever make no sense. But with that being said, we gonna bounce, man. Let me get this pulled up real quick. Peace.
Symbols in the ceiling. Eyes in the pale.